The recipient of this week's Just You Award goes to Prima Jope. Her podcast is called The Best Kept Secret, and that's you, not her. And what I love about Prima is she recognized many people in her audience have trauma. And so rather than trying to push her agenda and her formula, she recognized, let's look at the trauma, whether it's me or if I refer you to someone, and let's get some healing so that we can succeed. And then she recognized with her marketing model of narrowing down, having an avatar, she was talking to everyone, but really that was excluding people. So she changed her format to speaking to one person rather than the masses. And it is making a difference in her presentation. Prima, thank you for being so willing to learn and to grow. And it's so evident that your heart is to serve others. Thank you and congratulations.
This sensitive part of our right brain needs a safe space. Even if it's just a Zoom space, has to be a no criticism zone. We have to kind of shut down that left brain bully, I call it sometimes, that says you can't. Not be so product oriented and have fun. Give yourself grace to try something new.
If you have been thinking or saying, I want to do a podcast, but then immediately you think, I'm not techie. I hate my voice. Who would listen? What would I say? If you are a woman over 40, you have things to say. And with my course, the Podpreneur Blueprint, you can get a podcast up and running within a week if you'd like. If you're not techie, don't worry. I give you options of how to find someone that can help you. We are not islands. We don't do this alone. If not now, when? Because on New Year's, when you make that new resolution, this year, I'm going to think about this. You could be saying, this year I did, and I have 52 episodes. You can do this. Learn all about podcasting with the Podpreneur Blueprint System. Go to www.coachlori.com and get your flash sale today. Somebody's praying for an answer, and you have it. Will you say yes? Go to www.coachlori.com. That's LAURIE.
Has your life, your dreams been interrupted? Good news. It is possible to reinvent our lives. People are doing it every day, and some are brave enough to share the struggles, disappointments, and challenges. If you are looking for a new beginning, a do-over, or to rediscover your passion, maybe even find a new one, then grab a cup of coffee and let's talk. Interrupted, Act 2, Reinventing Your Legacy, with your host, Coach Lori.
Karen Deloach is a creativity specialist. Welcome.
Thank you so much. Yes, I've spent decades as an artist, an art teacher, all ages, even in college, and written books that I use in my college classes, and actor, filmmaker, and now in my second act, I am an online entrepreneur as a teacher of art as self-therapy, wellness through creativity, and help people get their own personal creativity stirred up.
I know that you got there because your life was interrupted, and we'll get back to that. But tell me what you love about what you do right now.
As an artist and an art teacher, there's certain things about the healing power of art that I discovered and seen happen in different ones of my students and even myself. I knew it intrinsically in my heart. But with this change of moving into artist self-therapy, I started studying the research, the science. And I'm not a scientist. Obviously, they don't know everything about the brain and the mind that they want to, but without exception, the experts agree that there is healing in the arts for all of us. And I've become completely convinced that everyone is a creative. We tend to think of that as the artistes, the musicians, the artists, the filmmakers, not everybody, but we have half our brain that is devoted to creativity. And I'm excited to see what can happen in people's lives as they embrace their personal creative giftings.
As a coach, I run up against that. People will say, well, I'm not an artist or I'm not creative. And I always say we're all creative. Maybe we've gotten an impression you're creative but that there are so many different levels. I've seen healing through the arts. What are some things that you have seen?
I've seen what happens when you have negative mindsets that say, oh, you can't sing, for instance. I wanted to go on Broadway. You can't sing. Well, guess what? I'm not going on Broadway if I can't sing. I didn't realize as a child that you could learn to sing. But at that time, it shut me completely down from that dream. And art was something I loved. I loved going to art museums. My mother was very good at exposing us to the beautiful art of the world. When I was 10 years old, I had a really incredible experience. My 5th grade class went to the New York World's Fair. We were going to see the dinosaur exhibit. We were going to see the GE technology of the future and Michelangelo's Pietà. Now, I wasn't raised in the church. I had no clue what this sculpture was about. All I knew, it was carved out of one piece of marble by a young man in his 20s. And I stood there in the middle of my 5th grade class weeping. I didn't understand what it meant, except it touched me so deeply, it changed my life. How could someone carve not just the hole in his hand, but the veins and portray this life? It was the body of Jesus laying across his mother, Mary, when he'd been brought down from the crucifixion. I was astounded, the beauty on her face, the sorrow. I just couldn't stop crying. I didn't care about the dinosaurs anymore. I was so transfixed by this sculpture. It changed me. I couldn't get enough of it. I even started going to church by myself as a 10-year-old. I'm like, what is this that I felt? And I knew that art has the power to transcend. And we've all had that experience with music. We've had music touch us in places that words don't. As a theater and filmmaker, stories do light up our lives. I endeavored to go to art school and theater at the same time. I loved to draw. I was good at drawing and I loved doing drawing. And then I went into painting classes and my teachers pretty much convinced me that I couldn't paint. They used 4-letter words to describe my paintings. They wanted me to be more of an abstract, something that I wasn't, and I couldn't do it. And I came into agreement with their negativity. They convinced me I was a 3-dimensional artist. I went to graduate school in sculpture and ceramics, which I still love. But every time I tried to finish a painting from then on, I couldn't. I couldn't push past that negativity that was rolling through my brain saying, oh, well, you're just reinforcing what they said. You're not a painter. You can't paint. Then after 10 years, I ran into a mentor, someone who had been to the Art Institute of Chicago and taught me how to paint, which made me able to then do the naturalistic work I wanted to do, people and places. It also made me a better teacher because I teach my students the fundamentals. As a homeschool mom, I started experiencing teaching all age children and adults. And I had this one student who had ADHD, was dyslexic and struggling in his academics. So his mama brought him into my studio. Well, that child just thrived in arts. He was good at sculpture, he was good at drawing and painting, and I entered his work and others in very large youth competition. They started winning ribbons, and that gave him the confidence he needed to push past his own limitations to do the academics he needed to do to graduate from high school. So that was number one, how art really brought healing and confidence to this young man's life. But then I entered his work for one last time in this youth competition, and he won not just first in his place, but best in show. He left that competition and unfortunately then experienced a traumatic brain injury, an infection that caused him to get a stroke and be paralyzed on the right side of his body. They had to replace his skull with plastic. He wasn't even expected to live. 4 months after rehabilitation in the hospital, he still couldn't talk. He could just drag the right side of his body with a walker. He was trying to keep his right hand from curling up. 18 years old. So his mom brought him back to my studio where I said, well, let's try learning to draw with your left hand and paint. And he did. And he started doing really, really well with it, to the point where I got a call from his neurosurgeon. He said, what are you doing with David? I'm like, I don't know. I'm just teaching him art like he has for decades. And he said, don't stop. He said, he is getting healing on the left side of his body. He's stronger with his weak hand than I am. And I'm a surgeon. I didn't understand at that time about the ability of the brain to be plastic, and those neural connections he had been making between right brain and left brain were now working for him. And he started being able to talk and to walk. And now if you look at him, you would know he had a plastic skull. He can talk, he can walk. He's still stronger with his left hand than his right hand, but he's a walking, talking miracle. And his family, even his neurosurgeon, are convinced that art helped heal that young man.
I had a client say, I always wanted to be an artist, but my teacher told me never to try to do art for a living. Another one wanted to be a nurse, and she said, my teacher said, don't ever try to do a job with math. And it breaks my heart that we can give people messages that then they will adopt and they will believe and not do the thing they're here to do.
I relate to that as I shared personally with my story, 10 years. I started having these beautiful babies, wanted to paint them, and I had these unfinished canvases because of mindsets, how important that is. But another thing, and I'm sure you've seen this in your practice, you ask 5 and 6 year olds, do you like to color and dance and paint and draw? Do you like to drum? I had one of my sons, everything was a drum. And of course he ended up a musician and a drummer. Did you like climbing? Did you like telling stories? And these are all clues for us. Even now, at this stage of your life, what did you love then? Because it's still in you to do it. And it is learnable. It's all learnable. Talent only goes so far. I truly went to school with extremely talented people, but some of them never continued. I've pushed forward to get better and better because some of the things weren't natural, but I love it. And it drove me. My mom giving us crayons and paper as little children. Well, it just wasn't big enough. So I had to use the walls, right? I mean, this little piece of paper just wasn't enough. Of course, I got into big trouble, but my mom couldn't know that someday people were going to pay me big bucks to paint on their walls and become a muralist. And so, we have a school system, because then you ask those kids after they're 5 and 6 at 15 and 16, do you love to do music and art and drama? And most of them say no. What happens in that 10 years is the very thing you're describing. People are shut down. Our right brain is sensitive. It is intuitive. It's imaginative. It's touched deeply into our heart. And so it doesn't like criticism. It doesn't thrive under criticism. I know my teachers, when they were criticizing me, thought they were making me a better artist, when in actuality, my sensitive right brain was shut down from their negative comments. And unfortunately, these teachers, I've had people say, as a kindergartner, I just didn't like coloring in the lines. And so they ripped my paper up and said, you can't color. She says, I remember being in 3rd grade, someone said, come color with me. And she goes, I can't color. Can you imagine shutting a child down that little? Left brain skills are important. Order and memorization and critical thinking. These things are very valuable. They're also measurable. And that's what our school system does. Often even just to the trivialization of right brain skills that are so much more subjective. It's harder to judge. I understand that, but it also is easy to shut that part of ourselves down, but it's still there. And I'm telling you, as you have had that part of your life interrupted, it's not too late. It's never too late, and you're never too old. I'm 70 years old, starting a new entrepreneurial business online and learning all these new technical systems. You're never too old to change and to get to do what you love, because it's still in you. It's still there. That little 5 and 6 year old that loves spinning, you can still take line dancing classes. There's so many ways to be creative. And these are some of the things that I've been exploring this last couple of years. One more story about the healing power of art. And this one's dramatic also. A mom that brought her child, I got her doing sculpture. She was just fantastic. And then she came to me and said, Karen, I've just been diagnosed with late stage breast cancer and given 6 months to live. Well, she started doing all the medical things you do. And I said, look, I got a project that I'm working on, a room installation, and I have hundreds of pieces to make by 9 months from now. Help me. Come into the studio and work with me. And she said, I don't even know if I'm going to be here in 9 months. I said, you'll have a legacy to leave your family. Do it with me. So sure enough, Jan joined me in the studio. We had a blast making cookies, cakes, candies, cupcakes, stands, a show called Taste and See, a sweet shop. And people would come in. We even got chairs that we modeled, making cafe tables. It looked like a chocolate shop. People thought they were going to come in and have a piece of chocolate, and it was all made out of porcelain. We experimented with colors to get light chocolate, dark chocolate. So not only was she there in 9 months, she was in remission. And I'm happy to say 8 years later, she is still completely cancer free. And she did the medical things, but then she utilized this gifting in her to be distracted from what was going on physically, to focus on something beautiful and fun and creative. She's still a friend. She still says, I know that doing that art helped save my life that year.
There's a bumper sticker I love. I see it every now and then. It says, art saves lives.
I haven't seen that one. I would certainly get it. It does. It saves our lives. And so you don't have to have these infirmities happen to you in order to say, you know what? I always wanted to write that book, or I always wanted to fill in the blank. It's probably easier than you think. This is a great study I read about singing, because it was something that I was definitely shut down from a very early age. And I can sing in a choir. If I got people around me singing the note, I can belt out the right notes, but put me next to a soprano and then my alto goes every which way but loose. So I understand. But nobody can stop me from singing in the shower. So they did a study of what happens when you sing in the shower. You like to sing in the shower? A lot of people do. So when you do that, there you are, scrub-a-dub-dubbing, right? You're resting your left brain, even as you're using it. Movement uses that left side. And as you're singing, you're engaging that right brain and you're making these neural connections. You're not thinking about anything other than just getting this done, singing along, and you get out, you feel good. Well, you've just been releasing serotonin, the happiness chemical, into your brain. You've got these new connections, and all of a sudden, I hadn't thought about saying it that way in my book, or I hadn't thought about solving this work problem this way, or how to deal with my son this way, or something comes to your mind and you don't realize that as you're singing in the shower, you are actually showing forth your mental brilliance in new connected ways. Albert Einstein said creativity is the intellect having fun. So you need more fun in your life if you're going to live up to what Albert Einstein says, to have our intellect have fun. Helps our brilliance, helps get rid of mental fog. As you read that bumper sticker, art heals. And when we say art, we're talking about the whole arts world and entertainment. It doesn't have to be drawing and painting and sculpture. It can be gardening, or how about trying new recipes? Cooking. I have a 3-part pop-up podcast that people are welcome to have for free that talks more about, how to release your creativity. And one of the ways I talk about is taking a stroll. Now, I'm not talking about a Fitbit, count your steps, aerobic walk. I'm talking about an observational stroll, maybe with your spouse, maybe with your dog, maybe with your grandchild or whatever. And you're noticing the sky and you're noticing the clouds and you're pointing out the flowers or hearing the crunch, hearing the birds flying around, seeing other neighbors. Again, is doing like you were singing in the shower without even trying. You're connecting left brain, right brain. You're operating in a new level of brilliance, releasing serotonin and all the other happiness chemicals. You're helping yourself be more brilliant. I've got a man that just been diagnosed with Parkinson's. It's on his right side. He's right-handed. So guess what? Teaching him to draw and paint left-handed. And we're doing it via Zoom. Didn't we all get interrupted during COVID and learn new ways to do our businesses?
Have you heard of Joni Eareckson Tada?
Oh, absolutely. She's the same age as I am. So I followed her ever since I read her first book, and just could imagine what she was going through and what she's been through. She's amazing, inspiring person.
She became paralyzed diving into a lake, and she was so depressed. And I don't know if it was her sister, but somebody told her to draw, and she's like, I'm paralyzed, so draw with your mouth. She started drawing amazing pictures with her mouth, and it took forever holding the pencil in her mouth. But was she healed of being paralyzed? No, but her life has taken a very different turn, and she has helped so many people because she was so depressed and just didn't want to go on, didn't think she had anything to live for. And now she's changing the world. As
an international ministry, she also has written books, and she's a speaker, an international speaker. Yeah, there's nothing like seeing people that have gone through worse than we have to really say, buck it up, kid, you can do it. If she can do it, I can do it. And she's always been in my mind and my heart. I read her book when I was still very young, going, wow, stop complaining, Karen. Look what she can do. You can do it too.
Yeah, humbling, huh? We're almost out of time, but I want to get to the part of what interrupted you and got you back on track with this very thing that you love that is now changing lives.
Well, definitely, having that negative mindset that I was describing earlier and getting the help getting someone to actually work with me to build my skills. That just changed my life because I overcame not just the negativity, but my own skill deficit. I needed to get better at my skills, which I wasn't learning in school. 4 different painting classes I tried. At that time, it was way to just figure out who you are and say it. I'm like, I don't know who I am. I'm 20 years old and my family's splitting up. I don't know what's going on. I got nothing to say. Just help me draw, paint better. When I finally got that kind of help, it changed me, got me back on track as an artist and, got me the confidence. And that's a lot of what it is gaining enough skill at what you want to do to give you the confidence to keep doing it. And then of course, with COVID, all my art classes shut down and I had to learn how to teach via Zoom. Okay, we're going to learn visual arts online. And now I've written 3 books and I teach art at a college and it's a community college. It's rural. And I needed a book that had way more pictures than the other books, was more about story and impact than it was about left brain, because art history books are usually written by art historians. I'm sure they love art, but they coming from it a different side. And I always saw that when I was in graduate school taking art history and even challenged them. Most of us are artists here. We're coming from, I didn't even understand left brain, right brain at the time. So I wanted to touch my students in a way that I knew that even if they were never going to be artists, number one, they're going to have their own creativity stirred up. They have to paint. I mean, they have to draw, get them to draw, and they're going to look at the incredible rich history of Western art. They're going to select an artist. I selected artists like this cover artist who's from our culture here in the South, who grew up descendants of slaves with Western African skills that they still do. These beautiful baskets. If you come to Charleston, South Carolina, you'll see the basket makers from the Gullah culture. And Jonathan Green left his island and went to art school. And he's the first one to ever do it. And he does these incredibly beautiful representations of his life and his culture with color and honors them. He's not saying, wow, we came from slaves, which is okay. There are artists that do that. He's saying, look at the color and the beauty and the life that they have built and represent who we are. And my students love him and love his work and relate to him. Finding something that stirs your joy up inside. And that's in all of us. As we talked about having this side of the brain that is creative, what is inside of you? Remember back when you were 5 and 6, what did you love? Was it telling stories? There's acting troupes that take all ages. We have one here locally, they always need grandparents if you're older. You may not be the young ingenue, but you can be a grandparent and things like that are still inside of you. It's not too late.
So because it's a podcast, will you read us the name, the title?
Art History and Appreciation. It's Creative Exploration and Application by Karen Deloach. I also have How to Draw, which is on Amazon, and it has exercises that you can go through to build your own skills, and I tell a bit of my story in it. Also, getcreativewithkaren.com is where you can go to get my pop-up podcast that explains more about creativity and the science behind the arts and how you are a creative.
Can you explain to us what a pop-up podcast is?
Yeah, I've only learned too. It's a podcast that you register for and it gets dropped into your email. The first episode is about 20 minutes and then the next day, the second episode and then the third episode. And then it kind of disappears after a week. And it gives you an opportunity to book a call with me. And through that, I can certainly give you the pop-up podcast lifetime access.
That's really great because I think sometimes people get a little daunted by, a podcast and I've got to do it every week or so many episodes. And so to think, hey, let's just do a little mini series with 3 that will be attached to your email. That's really brilliant.
Thank you. I've learned how to do it. It's a lot of systems put in place. It's to get more information to help maybe come up with some ideas and connect with me if they want to work with me. I love to help people find out their own brilliance and stir it up. It's kind of my superpower, helping people do that.
I love that. I have a friend who went into school to be a counselor, actually a little later in life, and she always wanted to do art. Well, when her and her family had to move, she wasn't working, but she'd always wanted to do art. And she was the one whose art teacher said, don't ever do a job with art. Well, what she did is she got all these art supplies, Fimo, clay, painting, whatever she could find. And she opened her garage and invited people to just come and do art. And it was so amazing. Just the transformation when people come in, not with big expectation of, I'm going to come out and be an artist, but I'm going to go draw a wheel on a paper plate and see what happens.
Those chemicals and that brilliance happens whether the art is good or bad. It happens even if you're looking at art. So I encourage you, every town has some artist who displays their work, and even some towns, they stay open late on first Fridays or first Thursdays, and you can meet the artists and find what you love, because there's a great variety. If you don't like this gallery of stuff, try another one, because it's going to have all the, from very realistic to not realistic to abstract expressionist, and you find what kind of moves you. We can choose what we put on our walls.
My big takeaway from today is art can change your life and your brain, and that it's never too late. So before we go,
what is it you really want us to know?
This sensitive part of our right brain needs a safe space. It needs, just like she just described, a friend who'd created a garage space. And that space, even if it's just a Zoom space, has to be a no criticism zone. We have to kind of shut down that left brain bully, I call it sometimes. It says you can't, not be so product oriented, and have fun. Give yourself grace to try something new.
I love that. That is so beautiful. Tell us again how we can work with you.
www.getcreativewithkaren.com is the main place that can get you the pop-up podcast, and also other ways you can book a call with me from there.
We know you've been waiting to get creative. Here's your opportunity.
That's right.
Thank you, Karen.
My pleasure. My pleasure. Thank you for having me.
If you love this podcast, here's a big ask. Will you share with your friends and family, subscribe, give us a review, and a 5-star rating, so that others looking to reinvent their lives will be able to get the help they're looking for? Thank you in advance.